How are you doing, Zach?
Doing great. How you doing?
Very good. Yes, very good. I was very excited to look at part two of Rebel Moon. I mean, what an ambitious, exciting franchise. And I think the most exciting thing for me was finding out that you'd kind of masterminded it from, well, not from a book, basically. I mean, it's such a it's such a broad and expansive world to sort of come up with. Can you talk about how that sort of came about?
Yeah, I look, I have a great and kind of deep interest in mythology and a deep interest in I love sci-fi fantasy. And I just felt like part of the reason why we just were like, let's just do it from scratch was that it also, and I think that it will become more obvious when you see the director's cuts, but, I also wanted to kind of like have a little bit of fun with the genre that I feel like, and by fun, I mean like sort of be able to like push it into like, whether it be sexuality or violence or, mythology, all the like weirdness, which of course, you get a little teeny taste of in the PG-13. But I think the PG-13 really represents the sort of what I would say is the more earnest kind of, kind of down the middle version of the movie, which is fun to watch and really exciting. And then later on, you'll get the like weirdo kind of deconstructed version of that. But that was kind of the why of it when I really wrote it at the beginning, was just because there was a bunch of stuff I wanted to see that was crazy. And so I was like, let's do that,
I mean, did you have to scale it back once you'd come up with the original ideas? Because I mean, with your imagination, when you're especially going into sort of sci-fi world, you can try and do so many things that are wildly ambitious and wildly expensive. I mean, how was the writing process? Was it kind of come up with the first part? There was
a few gags that we just couldn't, that were too big, but not that many, because the story is pretty straightforward when you really think about it, when you really boil it down. We're like, we're there in the village, the bad guys come, the bad guys leave. We decide to go get guys. We go out, we get them, we come back. The bad guys come back, we fight them.
Yeah, sort of classic storytelling. I mean, I suppose you're very well known for your stylistic approach, and I think that's something that our audience, because we're a filmmaking podcast, and that's something our audience is really excited by.
Sure.
At what stage are you? I mean, how do you even start to put together your first draft of a script? I mean, I'm guessing it is a director's script in a sense that you're really setting all the tone and the world building and that kind of thing. I mean, do you think about the world in detail? Do you do sort of small treatments and then just get stuck into the script? Like, how does that process sort of come about for you?
Yeah, we tend to whiteboard the movie pretty extensively, and pretty detailed as far as the scenes go and the character breakdown and all that. That's really the main work we do right away. I normally write the beginning and the end of the movie.
Okay. Yeah.
And in the R-rated version of the movie, I guess in both, I wrote probably up to like, granary to the granary fight, and that was like the initial movie, right? Like when I was pitching it to like Kurt, and like Kurt's been kind of hearing about it and kind of working on the story with me for a long time. And, it's like one of those things where you talk about the ideas and stories, we would talk about them. And then one day I just kind of wrote it down and I said, what do you think? And then he was like, that's cool. And then when I got Kurt and Shay involved, I kind of had that as sort of a pitch, like to say like, this is the tone. And that also included this 20-minute sequence that's not even in the PG-13 that opens the movie in the R-rated version. So so when you read that, I think when you read from there to, it's like 40 pages. So like you have 40 pages and you're like, okay, I got it. Like this is the movie. And that also, I think, allowed all of us to be really in the tone, and then I wrote kind of out the end, like, sort of the end battle between Cora and Noble. And then there's actually another scene at the very end that's not in this version even.
I mean, you're kind of well known for your director's cuts, and I think that's, you know, it's actually a great thing, because you're catering for two audiences at the same time. So you're keeping the film fans happy, and you're also keeping whoever's distributing it happy. I mean, was Netflix an instinctual sort of choice for this? I mean, I suppose to give you the freedom as well to explore a new IP.
It's 100%. They've been incredibly great partners, and just really like, I mean, it's a crazy, it's a brand new IP. It's completely original. You know, like, was it 200? Like, I feel like I gave them, I think, a 225-page script to start. You know, they were just like,
short one to read.
Yeah, and so then the whole thing was like, oh, let's turn it into 2 movies. We just kind of, instead of trimming it, because that was the original idea, was like, oh, just trim it. And then I was like, I can't. And so then we just broke it in half. And I think that in my mind, it worked out really incredibly well, because, you know, you get this, like, if you watch the movies back to back, it's like a nice 4-hour immersion sort of experience, you know?
Yeah. And was that a conscious choice to not sort of split it into hour-long episodic, that kind of format? And I think it works very well as having a sort of a grand experience by doing it the way you've done. But it's interesting to think about.
Yeah, I feel like, sure. I think it did. I think it was. I think the idea was like I was developing it with the movie side, and I think, to them, the idea of like creating 2 2-hour movies that kind of. The other sort of experiment was like the sort of really close release window to see, like, because we shot the movies together, so we could just go bang, bang. And like, while you're still kind of remembering Rebel Moon, you get another Rebel Moon. And then when we release the director's cuts, those both are going to drop on the same day.
Oh, nice.
Like, so it'll be like a 6-hour drop on the same day.
That's
these 2
cool.
3-hour movies, So we'll see how, like, it'd be interesting for people to experience it that way as well. I've always wanted the window to be tighter than what we've done, but it's still way earlier than a normal sequel, of course. And
And what was the sort of creative collaboration with Netflix? I mean, obviously you're an extremely well-known director. You've got a very distinct style. Obviously you've got a proven track record. Was there any sort of thoughts of, okay, we love this, but maybe this would really help us in how we're packaging?
By the way, that's the relationship with every movie studio. I don't know if you. No matter who the director is, there's no world where you show the movie, and you get notes and you talk about, a lot of it is to length. They really wanted the movies to be close to 2 hours. So that was a big driver. And also PG-13 and really accessible, because it's like, it was an experience. And I wanted I agreed that we should have a kind of really broad audience experience, that everybody could enjoy. That wasn't for kids, but kids, not kids, whatever, younger adults could enjoy it. And so a lot of the notes went to that, because we were really working off this very hard R-rated, super long movie. That was the sort of thing that was the template. So, but the nice thing about them was they were like, okay, we're working over here kind of to sculpt these 2 movies, using them as great partners and great sounding boards. And then meanwhile, over here, they're like, you can make your movie with no notes and no anything and just do whatever the fuck you want. So that was for me, that I've never had that experience. I don't know if any filmmaker has, to have this, to be running 4 movies at the same time, because I don't consider the director's cuts to be extended versions. They are alternate universe, alternate reality versions of these movies, because there's a lot of stuff that happens in those movies that doesn't happen in PG-13. There's some things that happen in PG-13 that don't happen in the R-rated version. It's a really interesting, like, right now we're running 2 parallel universes next to each other. A lot of things do cross over, of course, but they're also completely weirdly separate kind of concepts.
Does that mean you have to kind of shoot specific material for one that doesn't sort of necessarily go into the other?
Correct.
Yes.
Yep.
And you're thinking about that all the way through the sort of budgeting. Yeah,
there's some lines of dialogue that are different. There's like everything. we went so far in the weeds that there's a take, there'd be like, the actor would do a take of the same dialogue. And I'd be like, that's for the R-rated, that's for the PG-13. Like, even though it's the same take, and they're like, I just said the same words, you know, and you might be like, and when you watch, you're like, oh, that scene was exactly the same, but it was in PG-13. I'd be like, well, actually, the third take, that monologue is actually, the second take is in PG-13 and the fourth take is in the R-rated.
I mean, that's an incredible amount of detail to be thinking of. It's brilliant.
Yeah. So yeah, it's crazy. But and I'll say that the experience is so I think as a experience or cinematic experience, it's really, one doesn't negate the other, I think, which is a really interesting thing. Like, you know, I would say that in my experience, a lot of times I find the director's cuts of my movies are the director's cuts. And so by definition, they sort of cancel the theatrical version or whatever you want to call it. They just from a sort of filmmaker standpoint. Now, in this case, because it's sort of the alternate reality version sort of mentality, I don't feel the same way. I feel like the PG-13 is its own experience, and that's cool. And, you know, I'm excited for people to go on that journey, but I feel like then the sort of those movies, they actually have different titles than the PG-13. Like the names of the movies, this Rebel Moon, you know, part one, and then a different name rather than Scargiver or Child of Fire. You know what I mean? It's like they have different names. But so that's what I mean by like it's a cool. I feel like we set up a smart machine to produce all these movies. But from a filmmaking standpoint, it was quite. We got in the groove with it pretty amazingly. So it was fun. My script supervisor was not happy. She was the most. She was the most
working very hard
because she had to track everything for the like, oh, you got to make sure they have to say that dialogue for PG-13 now. Make sure they say, you know, they can't say fuck every 5 minutes. They got to like now. So yeah. So there was a lot of that.
Very cool. Just welcoming Giles. He's my colleague on the podcast.
Oh, awesome.
Hello, mate.
Yeah, we haven't talked about pre-production or casting yet. If you wanna jump in, Giles.
Yeah, pre-production must be a fascinating time for you then. Do you like how busy is that for you? Because for most people, it's devising everything, you know, in terms of this going through the script, your storyboard. What about you? How do you work in that period? Do you love that period? Do you prefer being on set? But mainly, what is your process in pre-production?
Yeah, I'm drawing pretty much the entire prep of the movie. It takes me about 5 months to draw a normal movie, and this one being, you know, 6 hours. What was essentially, we shot 6 hours of content. The drawing process was insane, more than I've ever done. I think I drew 3,000 frames or something crazy like that for this, and so it was a lot of work. And then in the meantime, like pretty much all the weekends and nights, I'm drawing, and then the rest of the time, we're scouting and drawing, and also I built all the lenses for the movie were completely bespoke and custom made for the film, and they the process of building the lenses, which I created with Zero Optic, was insane and like completely. We went down the deepest rabbit holes, anamorphic rabbit holes in history. Not in history, I'm sure other people have done it, but for me, it was like crazy. So that was really also an adventure. Sort of my cinematographer's hat side of me was very busy as well. So yeah, there's a lot to do, but it was really, I had an amazing time making the movie. We shot it here in LA. It was the first movie I've ever shot in Los Angeles. So it was nice to be able to go home at night and stuff, because every single movie we've shot somewhere else.
What are some of the challenges of shooting in LA?
The challenges of shooting in LA are, one, that your life continues. Normally when you go on location, like for instance, for Justice League, we moved to England, right? And we lived, we lived, in Chipperfield and in the country, and it was like lovely, but we also didn't have our normal lives. So we really were just moving. It's like circus time, right? You join the circus and you go, and then everything you do is, for the movie. But when you shoot at home, you still have to, like, the dogs go, the kids got to go to school. It's like, it becomes like, it's weirdly, it's a little bit harder, actually, to be honest, even though it's more comfortable to be in your own house with all your clothes and your bed and like your normal lives. But it's better for the kids because they don't get, as disrupted. They got teeny English accents when they were living in England.
Oh, that's cute.
They'd be like, "Daddy, do you think the leaves will fall in autumn?" And I'm like, "What?" we have to put on our jumpers. And I'd be like, "Jumpers? Where are jumpers?"
Jumpers. Are you able to differentiate when you're on set as going home at night? Because sometimes when you go home at night, like you say, your kids are there, and when you're on location filming, you're just concentrating on film. Everything's about that moment. But suddenly now you've got family and home life to deal with. Is that okay for you to juggle?
It's fine. I mean, and also don't forget, my wife is my producer. So she also has the same, we have the same, all of our troubles on set, they just come home. It's like I think in that way it works because we both have the same.
Okay.
We both, when I get home, it's not like she's more likely to have to get on the phone and be like, we put out a fire, like, oh, the wheat's not growing or the set's, not going to be done or whatever. She's the one having to deal with that. And I'm like, okay, well, let me know if we're filming that tomorrow, because I don't know. Like, I'm ready to shoot that. And she's like, well, the wheat's not going to be ready, so we can't shoot. These are the conversations we have at night, when we're at home.
What were some of the challenges of shooting this? The biggest challenge, obviously, there's a lot of challenges. And also that mix between using real assets and CGI and how you sort of combine that.
Yeah, we built a lot of practical sets for this movie. There's a lot of giant, the Veltian village, that we built up here just north of Los Angeles. That was a really immersive set with the gigantic, village, the longhouse, and all the interiors were practical. So all that stuff, we built for real. I think probably the biggest challenge was really dealing with the harvesting the wheat was the biggest crazy challenge, because we planted all that wheat. We had it on we had hired these farmers that told us when the wheat would be ready. The wheat, of course, was not ready. Apparently our soil was not didn't have the nutrients that they thought it would have. And so the wheat didn't grow as fast as it was supposed to. So it was like 3 weeks behind.
Real farmer problems.
Well, yeah, all farmer problems, and production, movie production really isn't on the same schedule as sort of the natural world, oh, it didn't rain, or it rained. Actually, we had a really wet spring. And so it kind of pushed, it pushes the wheat could live longer. That's one of these things that I didn't know. I thought that the wheat would ripen faster, but it doesn't. That's not how it works. So these are things I learned. But yeah, so that was like a really crazy. So we had to build all these sets super fast and pull up the schedule and do all these crazy things that, no one teaches you that in film school, that you're also going to be a farmer.
Yeah. What's been the challenges in your filmmaking career that would help our listeners? The things that people don't necessarily tell you, what the things that people tell you to say are the things you should do, but actually sometimes it's the opposite. Yeah,
it's a great question. I guess it's been my experience so far that, there's a real fine line and a really interesting sort of philosophical question about what is, to create a piece of entertainment that's purpose is to entertain, right? And the line is between your sort of basic instincts in storytelling, right? Because, a story entertains when it's immersive, right? Like when you are seduced by the characters and you're on the ride. You don't even realize you're being entertained, right? It's happening to you. I feel like sometimes when you're conscious of the movie's attempts to entertain you, you kind of get mad, you get turned off by that. It's like a weird relationship. Don't love me to like, let me fall in love with you. It's like, and so I think that what I've learned is that, and I think the most important lesson is that your sort of natural instincts in regard to what you find entertaining, and that might sometimes be being more provocative, being more, not trying to make your story entertaining, but making it compelling to you is probably the primary goal of being a filmmaker. Is that if you are interested in the characters or the scenarios in a way that you can't stop thinking about it, or it's you have to figure out what to do next and all that, then it will be that for the audience. And I think that to second guess and or to take on, it's always important to understand the like story structure and 3-act structure, blah, 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 character development, all the things. From a technical standpoint, you have to know the rules before you can break them, all that. But I would say is that, probably your favorite movies, like when you really think about what movies were compelling to you or what movies really got you, for me anyway, it tends to be the ones where I feel the sort of the personality and or the hand of the filmmaker. I don't feel like no one put it to the committee. I feel like these choices are very personal that I'm feeling, right? And the personal choices, to me, tend to be more compelling because they are unexpected, or they are, they are unique. And I think through that, I would say as a young filmmaker or a budding filmmaker, it's important just to really be true to your personal voice. And because that's the thing that no one else can do. You can't, the AI could write you a movie that's probably pretty well structured, but you are going to do something weird that no one's going to do. And that's what I want to see. I want the weirdness.
And I think that's what makes you such a successful filmmaker. Zack, we've got to let you go. But best of luck with the whole franchise, and you keep making amazing, unique, brilliant personal works. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you guys. Really appreciate it.